Chapter 411, The bigger the hope, the greater the disappointment. Serious, Qi Nan kept a solemn expression. Her eyes only swept over Han Xingwu and moved aside right away. Tang Xiu himself didn't want to speak with Han Xingwu, so he looked at Wei Jiangbing, cupped his fists and said, "Are you the current owner of Buried Diamond, Wei Jiangbing?" Wei Jiangbing's brows furrowed deeper. He put down the chopsticks in his hands and lightly said, "Young man, could it be that you don't know something called etiquette? If you are Wei Jiangbing, I don't think it's necessary for me to respect you." Tang Xiu said lightly, "After all, I'm not one who thinks highly of someone who can abandon his children just because of having an aspiration or something." Children? Staring blankly, Wei Jiangbing abruptly got up from his chair, shock in his eyes, as he asked, "Who are you?" At this moment, even Han Jintong quickly stood, eyes fixated on Tang Xiu. "You're old, hence, you can only achieve an insufficient level in your Qigong practice." Slightly shaking his head, Tang Xiu said, "No wonder your cultivation was only raised to such a level after practicing for so many years. Anyhow, you'll learn about my identity later. But now, I want to know about the buried diamond. Did you buy it, or crafted it yourself?" "This old man crafted and carved it myself," Wei Jiangbing said in a deep voice. Happy with the answer, Tang Xiu asked once again, "You should have crafted it based on something, and it shouldn't be based on your imagination, right? You have seen a medicinal herb that had a shape like buried diamond, yes?" "Yes, I have seen it," Wei Jiangbing deeply said. "Where did you see it?" Tang Xiu asked. Wei Jiangbing didn't answer the question, instead, he asked, "I've answered some of your questions, shouldn't you also answer some of mine? You should be one of 6 at the beginning, and now there are only 2 of you. There should be 4 others, yes?" Tang Xiu said lightly. An earthquake shook Wei Jiangbing and Han Jintong's hearts as they exchanged looks. No one apart from them knew about that matter. How did this young man know about this? Wei Jiangbing stayed silent for a while, as he finally said, "Yes, there are indeed 4 others, including this old man's wife." "What relationship do you have with Senior Gu?" "She's my disciple," Tang Xiu said. "What?" Wei Jiangbing and Han Jintong exclaimed in unison. Han Xingwu, who stood at the side, looked confused and asked, "Tang Xiu, what are you talking about with these 2 grandpas? What's with there being other 4 people? What disciple?" Tang Xiu ignored her and looked at Wei Jiangbing, saying, "Now you should tell me. Where did you see that medicinal herb?" While suppressing his shock, Wei Jiangbing replied, "Shenong Ridge, Ghost King Valley." "Can you tell me the specific address?" After being silent for a while, Tang Xiu asked, "I urgently need that precious medicinal herb. I can help you break through your current bottleneck and further your cultivation if you can help me obtain it." His heart shook, yet, a forced wry smile appeared on Wei Jiangbing's old face. He shook his head and said, "There's nothing I can do. I picked that special medicinal herb in the past, trying to replant it in another place. In the end, the bud withered. Since I didn't know its efficacy and uses, I didn't dare to prescribe any medicines out of it. Hence, I threw it away. There should be no other such medicinal herb over there." Damn. Tang Xiu was furious. The demonic revival grass was a rare treasure. Countless supreme immortals and archdemons would fight for it if any were to appear in the immortal world or the demon realm. Yet, such a precious medicinal herb had actually been thrown and spoiled after falling into Wei Jiangbing's hands. Tang Xiu's expression was unsightly. After falling into silence for a very long while, he then slowly said, "Tell me the exact address. You don't need to be involved further. I'll find a map and mark it down for you." Following that, Wei Jiangbing left the dining room. He quickly came back with a map and marked the place with a red pen. He then asked after handing it over to Tang Xiu, "I want you to tell me something. Those 2 children of mine, are they still?" "They are fine. Tang Xiu collected the map carefully and lightly said, no one restricted their freedom. Only, they don't want to see the two of you. But if you, husband and wife, are still alive after a few years, I can help you see them. Wei Jiangbing's lips twitched. He then cupped his hands and said, Mr. Tang, we, husband and wife, owe them far too much. Please treat them kindly. I will treat them kindly. They are my people, to begin with. By the way, I still have matters to take care of, so I'll take my leave. Tang Xiu said lightly. Having said that, he turned around to leave. The series of events caught Han Qingwu by surprise. Seeing Tang Xiu leaving, she sobered up and then strode and stopped in his path. She stretched out her arms and said, what happened here, Tang Xiu? And you, what's going on with you? Tang Xiu was silent for a moment, looking at the familiar, yet unfamiliar face. It brought pain to his heart. Although he was full of hatred for Shui Qingqing, he learned that she had died as well. Nonetheless, Tang Xiu felt somewhat vexed. The feelings accumulated for millenniums, after all, was not something he could completely forget. He didn't want to have more contact with Han Qingwu, since he didn't know how to face her. He loved this woman, yet he hated her as well. But now, she seemed as though detached from the past, causing him to be at a loss for what to do. Hence, the less contact he had with her, the better. You're my teacher. You can say everything about academic matters to me. But outside the campus, I hope you won't involve yourself in my matters. We are not people of the same world, hence, maintaining distance is the best choice for us. After saying that, Tang Xiu avoided her arms and strode away. Han Qingwu was dumbfounded, she couldn't believe her ears. Tang Xiu's words were as though a thunderbolt that fiercely struck her heart. She didn't even know what happened to herself, yet at the same time, a sense of loss and disappointment was bred inside her heart, faintly paining her. Qingwu. Han Jintong called out to her in a low voice. Han Qingwu suddenly shuddered. At the same time, she felt pain and was suddenly flustered. She then realized that a layer of mist had already covered her eyes. What happened to me? She quickly lifted her hands and wiped away the tears that were coming out of her eyes. Wei Jiangbing and Han Jintong exchanged glances, as Wei Jiangbing then immediately said, Qingwu, let's sit down and eat. He's already left, and your grandpa and I have some matters to ask you. With a flustered look, Han Qingwu sat down. She concealed what she felt by taking a deep breath. Then, she said, Grandpa Wei, you want to ask me about Tang Xiu, right? Yes. Wei Jiangbing nodded and said, Tang Xiu's identity is not ordinary. If what he says is true, his identity can be said as terrifying. So, what we want to know is how much you know about him. How much do I know about him? It's so much. I know him way too much. Han Qingwu recalled the scene when Tang Xiu was hit by a car. Recalling as she sneaked to the hospital to visit the hospitalized Tang Xiu, recalling the time when he recovered from his injuries and went back to school as if he had a change in personality. Recalling as how he suddenly woke up from a muddle-headed state without knowing what he had done and behaved. The scenes of past events were played one by one. Han Qingwu could feel that at this time, Tang Xiu's position in her heart was probably placed in first. What's the matter with me? Could it be that I'm in love with him? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. I'm his teacher, and he's my student. We're different in age. The thoughts appeared inside Han Qingwu's mind one by one, though she vehemently rejected all of them. She ultimately recalled the apathetic, cold, and detached response from Tang Xiu, as well as his words. She was utterly upset and disconcerted, feeling very depressed. Qingwu. Seeing Han Qingwu dazed, Wei Jiangbing quickly shouted. Looking up, Han Qingwu then looked at Wei Jiangbing. She suddenly got up and said, Grandpa Wei, I suddenly remembered that I still have some things to do. After saying that, she turned around and walked out of the dining room. After that, she rode her bicycle and quickly left the courtyard. Wei Jiangbing looked at Han Jintong and forced a smile. It seems like it's not going to be easy for us to learn about Tang Xiu. Indeed. But he is someone who has a deep relationship with Senior Gu. Han Jintong said, we must find Senior Gu through him. We have been imparted a cultivated method in the past, and though afterward our strength indeed soared, it has been particularly difficult for us to make progress again. Hence, we must find a way for the sake of our path to immortality. I'll call Yang Zhenpan. Wei Jiangbing said. A few minutes later, Wei Jiangbing hung up the phone and looked pleasantly surprised. I've asked him. It's the Everlasting Feast Hall. Shanghai, the Everlasting Feast Hall. After leaving the orchard, Tang Xiu and Qi Nan went to the Everlasting Feast Hall. Since they hadn't eaten until now, Tang Xiu stayed in the manager's office and ate the dishes Qi Nan personally brought him. Boss, are you planning to go to Shenong Ridge? After Tang Xiu finished eating, Qi Nan, who accompanied him at the side, asked curiously while cleaning up the dishes. I must go there. Tang Xiu said, the object I must find is very important. I must try to find it even if the probability is very slim. Then, I'll go with you. Qi Nan quickly said. No need. Tang Xiu shook his head and said, you better return to Jingmen Island in the near future. Return to Jingmen Island? What for? Qi Nan was confused. Your chance has come. Tang Xiu gave a glance at her and lightly said, go to Jingmen Island and learn from Ji Qimei. You'll have a much better ability for me to use in the future. My chance has arrived? Qi Nan gaped and stared blankly, an ecstatic expression suddenly appearing on her face. She had waited strenuously for many years. She had made great contributions in wars and others fields for the Everlasting Feast Hall. And now, the chance she had been waiting for and dreamed of had finally come. She almost jumped up in excitement. Thank you, boss. Qi Nan knelt on one knee before Tang Xiu, saluting gratefully. She knew that getting this opportunity was certainly because of Tang Xiu. Because, after all, the Everlasting Feast Hall's core members began to receive cultivation methods right after Tang Xiu appeared. Chapter 412, Unlicensed Taxi. No need to thank me. It's your reward. Tang Xiu said lightly, you have done a lot of things for the Everlasting Feast Hall for the past few years, so it's time to give you this chance. I hope you can cultivate well in the future. Obtaining this chance is, but only the beginning. As to the heights you can achieve in your cultivation later, it will depend on your efforts, as well as correlates with how much you pay it back to the Everlasting Feast Hall. On what basis is it related, boss? Qi Nan curiously asked. It's heavily related. I've made a decision that every core member of the Everlasting Feast Hall can't get cultivation resources, unless they make significant contributions to the Everlasting Feast Hall. Otherwise, the members must work hard and go all out in their cultivation. In regards to cultivation speed, those who don't get cultivation resources obviously will have slower cultivation speed than those who get it. Furthermore, whoever can obtain a lot of resources and hand them over to the Everlasting Feast Hall will also get cultivation resources. For example? Qi Nan quickly asked. For example, you get a lot of precious medicinal herbs, minerals, bones or other materials from fierce beasts. After you hand them over to the Everlasting Feast Hall, you can get medicinal pills, magical objects, and other items. Qi Nan's eyes lit up as her breathing turned faster. She nodded repeatedly as she looked at Tang Xiu with a grateful expression. I understand, boss. Ji Qimei hasn't called you yet. That means that my command has yet to go through. Tang Xiu smiled and said, therefore, you are the first one to know about it. If you're smart enough, I'm sure you don't need me to continue giving you pointers, no? With an exceptionally brilliant smile, Qi Nan nodded and said, you don't need to give me any more pointers, boss. While Elder G hasn't yet started to summon everyone, I'll start buying a lot of materials in advance. When everyone gets this news, they will struggle to purchase various materials from all over the country. By then, the purchased materials price will rise, and the things they want to buy will also be reduced. You're promising and worthy to be taught. Tang Xiu nodded as he got up and said, well, I'm full now. Drive me back to Blue Star Villa Complex. I need to rest before leaving for Shenong Ridge. Affirmative. Qinan wanted to immediately start buying the materials, but she first sent Tang Xiu back to Blue Star Villa Complex. Inside the villa, Xue Chao was in the courtyard basking in the sun, while his wife, Du Wan, was knitting a sweater. In front of the two of them was their son, soundly sleeping on a small bed. You've finally come back, Boss Tang. Seeing Tang Xiu, Xue Chao immediately got up and said with a smile. Is your injury better? Tang Xiu looked at him and said with a smile. Though I have yet to fully recover, it's already much better. Xue Chao nodded and said, I can walk and do normal daily activities as long as they are not too demanding. Rest well to fully recover. Tang Xiu said with a smile, the military training should be almost over. We'll start attending classes after it's over. I'll attend the classes, Boss Tang. Xue Chao let out a simple and honest smile and said, and about the job you told me, can you introduce me now? Despite my injury not being fully better yet, but I have a strong body as a mountain dweller, so it won't affect my work. As if realizing something, Tang Xiu quickly asked, are you running out of money? I'll give. I still have 1,000 yuan remaining from the money you lent me, Boss Tang. Xue Chao waved his hand and said, it's still enough for my family to spend for some time. I just don't want to stay idle at home every day. I feel like I'm about to rust if I don't move my body. After thinking for a moment, Tang Xiu then nodded and said, all right. Do you have a driver's license? No, Xue Chao forced out a smile and shook his head. The place I'll introduce you to work at is a bit far from here. Tang Xiu said, you're still injured, so you might as well live there if you have to commute every day. How about letting big sis-in-law and your son live here while you rest there in the evening? Is there a place to live there? Xue Chao asked. I'll call her to provide you a place to stay. Tang Xiu said with a smile. Looking at his wife and child, Xue Chao suddenly asked, Boss Tang, what kind of accommodation does it have? If possible, I want to bring my wife and son too. We've been here for more than 10 days. If I can work there and there's a place for us to stay, we'll all live there. All right. I'll give you the address. Tang Xiu nodded and said, go there and look for someone called Qinan. Tell her what I told you and she'll make the arrangements. Furthermore, I may have to leave in a few days, so I'll see you again after I come back. Okay. Thanks, Boss Tang. Xue Chao said gratefully. What are you thanking me for? We're classmates, man. Tang Xiu waved his hand and said, like people say, being classmates in one lifetime, for 3 lifetimes will we become family, hence, we must help each other. That's right, when are you going there? If you're in a hurry, I can drive you there now. Nah. Forget it. Xue Chao shook his head and said, we'll go by bus. You're busy with your things. Anyways, I'll use my salary to buy you a drink after you come back. All right. Tang Xiu nodded with a smile. 10 minutes later, Tang Xiu had packed a simple change of clothes and directly left Blue Star Villa Complex. Since Shanghai was thousands of miles away from Shenong Ridge, he booked a flight ticket to Face City. However, he was speechless, because the tickets had all been sold out due to many passengers flowing in during summer vacation. He had no choice but choose the high-speed rail. Fortunately, this time his luck was quite good, as there still had a few tickets left. At 3 a.m., in the middle of the night, Tang Xiu came out of the Face City high-speed rail station. There was a busy stream of people busily arriving and leaving. The night was not quiet at all. Tang Xiu went out along with a stream of people extending for dozens of meters. He then saw an astounding sight when he stepped outside. There were 8 burly men in a black suit standing behind a tall woman in white, and no one around dared to approach them. Many were pointing at them and whispering to each other. With his good hearing, Tang Xiu learned from the whisperings that the woman was the secretary of Face City's Yellow Steel Group's boss, a relatively famous woman in Face City. Tang Xiu didn't stay long here. Those people didn't have the slightest relationship with him. He had checked the map before coming here, and he knew what travel route he should be taking. He knew that before going to Shenong Ridge from Face City, he must drive to Ziming County near Shenong Ridge. After that, he could then go to Ghost King Valley in Shenong Ridge from Ziming County. "Brother, want a ride?" A young man in his 24s or 25s, with yellow bleached hair and earrings, greeted him with a smile after seeing Tang Xiu walking out with one of his hands empty. "Do you know Ziming County?" Tang Xiu looked at him and asked. The young man scrutinized Tang Xiu and then hesitantly said, "Brother, the fare to Ziming County isn't cheap. The money doesn't matter. But I need to hurry there." Tang Xiu said. 450 yuan. "Gimme 450 yuan and I'll drive you there." The young man said. "Okay. Where's your car?" Tang Xiu said. The young man subconsciously traced his waist before he pointed at a place nearby, "Just over there, come with me." The young man brought Tang Xiu to a black Mazda and stretched his hand to open the door, saying, "Brother, the road to Ziming County is quite rough. Even if we go there at a fast speed, it will take more than 2 hours to get there." Taking the front seat, Tang Xiu nodded in a response and said, "It doesn't matter. Just drive slowly and pay attention to safety." "Okay." The young man replied and took the driver's seat, starting the car and leaving fast. However, the young man was apparently of a sanguine type. After he took a glance at Tang Xiu, he opened up conversation while driving. "Brother, my name is Chang Hao." "What's yours?" "I'm surnamed Tang." "Brother Tang, listening to your accent, you shouldn't be a local, right? Are you here on vacation or visiting relatives?" "I'm on vacation." Tang Xiu said. "There are tons of tourists coming to our resorts on vacation. Many of them especially come to visit the Shenong Ridge at this times of the year." Chang Hao nodded and said, "But you came here alone and with no baggage at all? This is the first time I see this. It feels great to play outside alone." Tang Xiu calmly replied. "That's so natural and unrestrained of you, Brother Tang." A sliver of envy appeared on Chang Hao's face as he said, "I myself am thinking about traveling everywhere alone. But heck, I'm forced by life and can only work from dawn to dusk. Alas, if I don't go all out to make money, I won't have money to buy formula milk for my child." "You're an unlicensed cab driver, right? Why don't you get a business license?" Tang Xiu said. "Nowadays, applying for a business license needs quite a long time, including tons of money." Chang Hao forced a wry smile and said, "Besides, the price for a taxi is sky high, and there are also tens of thousands of them. Although I drive an unlicensed cab, I can earn clean money. At the worst, I would only be cracked down and have to stay behind bars for some time." Tang Xiu nodded in response and no longer wanted to chat. "I'm going to sleep, call me out if there's anything." "All right." Chang Hao replied. Time passed by. It wasn't long after Tang Xiu fell asleep, as the sudden break instantly woke him up. He stretched his hand to the dashboard in front out of reflex, as the seatbelt also held his body. "What happened?" Tang Xiu growled. Looking pale, Chang Hao turned to Tang Xiu and forced a smile. "I seem to have hit something." Tang Xiu's brows raised. After getting out, he found the car had traveled to the empty suburbs. The road was rough and there were ditches on both sides. Far beyond was a boundless stretch of fields. He made a strange expression as he looked at the thing in front of the car, because something what was hit by the car was actually a wild boar. At the moment, the wild boar was lying 7 to 8 meters away on the ground, and there was a pool of blood around it. Your luck is kinda bad, don't you think? Tang Xiu said with a smile. Chang Hao's expression was rather unsightly. The car's front was smashed and the left headlights were completely destroyed. It would probably cost thousands of yuan to fix them. Tang Xiu then walked toward the wild boar. He then picked it up and said with a smile, anyhow, it hasn't died yet, but it can't live any longer either. To my surprise, this place actually has wild boars, and it's not dead yet though it got hit by a car. Its luck is a bit too bad. You. Chang Hao was shocked as he could clearly see Tang Xiu picking up the wild boar under the headlights. Chapter 413, An Old Acquaintance. Chang Hao had seen a person with such a great strength once. He once had a friend who could lift a copper lion weighing 200 to 300 kilograms above his head. He thought his friend was pretty strong, powerful to be able to do that. Yet, at this moment, looking Tang Xiu pick up the wild boar weighed at least 100 to 150 kilograms and not seem to exert any effort at all, he was shocked and unable to utter any words. Tang Xiu carried the wild boar and returned to the car. Looking at Chang Hao's shocked face, he said with a pale smile, I'm quite strong, so this pretty easy for me. Anyhow, do you want to take this wild boar? If you do, I'll load it into the car. If you don't want it, I'll throw it to the roadside. Gulping down his saliva, Chang Hao immediately nodded and said, I want it. This wild boar is so big, I can sell it to get some money. Though it's not enough to repair the car, at least I can reduce the loss a bit. Tang Xiu nodded and loaded the wild boar into the back seat, since the trunk couldn't hold it. After that, he boarded the car and continued on the road. 10 minutes later, 6 black SUVs came from behind and sounded their horns. After hesitating for a moment, Chang Hao gave them the pass. Then, the 6 cars passed by quickly from the side. At this time, Tang Xiu wasn't asleep. He was curious about the 6 black SUVs that just passed. He instantly released his spiritual sense. He didn't expect to see the woman in white and the others who were previously waiting at the entrance of the train station. And beside her was sitting an old acquaintance of his. How could it be him? A strange expression appeared on Tang Xiu's face, and he suddenly said, speed up and overtake those 6 cars. Why should we overtake them? Chang Hao was perplexed. Just pursue them like I'm telling you. I'll give you 1 grand fare if you can overtake them. Chang Hao's spirit aroused as he immediately stepped on the gas. The car instantly sped up and, within a few minutes, the distance between the car and the SUVs was only a dozen meters away. Furthermore, he kept honking under Tang Xiu's command. At the front, Li Laozhan, who was sleeping in the 3rd black SUV, slowly opened his eyes and slightly furrowed his brows. He took a glance at the back and asked, what's going on? It's the car we just passed by. Ji Shiyan said, they are now chasing us and keep honking. Do you want us to stop and teach them a lesson? Forget it, continue to drive fast. Li Laozhan shook his head and said. A few minutes later, Li Laozhan finally got impatient and then said in a deep voice, stop and park. Have a look at them. All right. Ji Shiyan replied and immediately ordered them to stop. After the 7 cars stopped, Ji Shiyan got off directly, followed by 4 strong men. When she saw Tang Xiu coming out from the car, she strode over and coldly said, you got a problem or something? Pointing to the SUV in front, Tang Xiu said lightly, I want to take a ride on that car. Bastard, don't you have a car as well? Ji Shiyan scowled. Be politer and civilized, will you? Tang Xiu's expression turned cold as he said, if not because of old Fatty Li's face, I would have torn your mouth apart. With a slightly changed expression, the anger in Ji Shiyan's eyes grew. Yet, she didn't act, and instead, vigilantly watched Tang Xiu. Who are you? How do you know that Mr. Li is in our car? Just cut the crap. Go and tell old Fatty Lee that I want a ride. Tang Shou said. After staying silent for a while, Ji Shiyan then turned and gave a signal to the 4 strong men with her eyes. She then walked to the SUV in front, knocked on the window, and said, "Boss Lee, there's someone behind us who says he knows you are in the car. He also said he wants to take a ride. Do you want to see him?" Huh? He knows I'm inside this car? Li Laozhan dazed and said in astonishment, "What's his name?" "I don't know." Ji Shiyan shook her head. "Well, I never thought that I was famous here. To think that I would bump into someone who knows me." Li Laozhan couldn't help laughing and said, "Let's go. I'll see him." As Li Laozhan got off, the 4 strong men from the other 2 cars on the front and rear also came out. 2 men were in front, and the other 2 were behind to protect him. "Old Fatty Lee, how come the longer you live, the more backward you become? You have no need for such a big formation protecting you, right?" Tang Shou teased loudly after seeing Li Laozhan. Li Laozhan dazed for a while and quickly walked forward several steps. After seeing Tang Shou standing with arms crossed and smiling, he immediately waved to the 2 bodyguards in front to make way, as he instantly strode toward Tang Shou. With an incredulous expression, he said, "Brother Tang, you, how come you're here?" Tang Shou hugged Li Laozhan and laughed, "What's wrong? You can come here, but I cannot." While suppressing his shock, a smile appeared on Li Laozhan's plump face. He laughed loudly and said, "It is said that, though kindred spirits are born 1,000 miles apart, they shall still meet. It seems like Brother Tang and I really are predestined friends. We haven't seen each other for quite a long time after leaving Saipan. Anyhow, how have you been? You went to Shanghai University, have you hooked up with any campus flowers?" "What the hell are you talking about?" Tang Shou couldn't help laughing and said, "I'm a chaste young man, how could I go to university to chase some chicks? Anyhow, I was kinda surprised at though. Why are you here?" "Well, it's for a business deal." Li Laozhan grinned. "You have a problem if I take a ride with you?" Tang Shou said with a smile. "What problem?" Li Laozhan joyfully replied, "I'm happy to have you ride the car with me. Anyways, let me introduce her to you. This is Ji Shiyan, the secretary of Yellow Steel Group's boss." Glancing at Ji Shiyan, Tang Shou said lightly, "Yeah, I taste some attitude from her. Kinda overbearing." Ji Shiyan didn't expect that Li Laozhan would actually know Tang Shou, and that the duo was apparently very close. After hesitating, she then slightly leaned forward and said, "Mr. Tang, I apologize for my attitude just now. I didn't know that you are Boss Li's friend." What happened before?" Li Laozhan was surprised. "It's nothing." Tang Shou said, "Anyhow, Fatty Lee, wait for me a bit, I'll be right back." Having said that, he returned to that unlicensed taxi driver's window. He took 1,000 yuan from his wallet, handed it over to Chang Hao and then said with a smile, "All right, you can drop me here. I'll take a ride with them." "Brother Tang, you're amazing. To think you came across such a big boss here." Chang Hao, who just heard the conversation between Tang Shou and Li Laozhan, raised his thumb and praised after receiving the money, "All right, I'll go back then. If you need a car after you come back, just give me a call. The fare will be just like we talked before." Tang Shou took Chang Hao's business card. After stuffing it into his pocket, he smiled and said, "No problem." As Chang Hao drove away, Tang Shou followed Li Laozhan into the SUV. Since they sat in the back seat, Ji Shiyan moved to sit in the front seat. The 6 cars started. With a smiling face, Li Laozhan asked, "Brother Tang, what are you doing in this place? That car before is an unlicensed taxi, right?" "Yup, it's an unlicensed taxi." Tang Shou said with a smile, "I got something to take care of in the depths of Shinong Ridge, thus I rushed here at night." "You got something to do in the depths of Shinong Ridge?" Li Laozhan was surprised and said, "What is it?" "It's unsafe there, there are tons of wild animals and poisonous swamp everywhere. I'm looking for some medicinal herbs," Tang Xiu said with a smile. Li Laozhan knew that Tang Xiu was a powerful martial artist, so he nodded and said, "What medicinal herbs are you looking for, Brother Tang? Need me to lend a hand? I still have quite a lot of time after finishing the business talk with the Yellow Steel Group's boss, so I can accompany you to Shenong Ridge." "No need." Tang Xiu shook his head and smiled, "The medicinal herb I'm looking for is very special, it's kinda hard to find." On the front seat, Ji Shiyan smacked her lips. She took a disliking to Tang Xiu due to his arrogance. "Brother Tang, you're looking down on this old brother of yours." Li Laozhan said discontentedly, "Your old brother might be weaker than you, but my skill is still more powerful than the average person. Besides, the more people we have, the stronger we are. With my help, perhaps you can find that medicinal herb sooner." After saying that, he looked at Ji Shiyan and said, "You go back and tell your boss that the contract signing will be delayed." This. Ji Shiyan was secretly exasperated and angry inside. Yet, the target of her anger was not Li Laozhan, but the irksome guy who showed up unexpectedly and disrupted the plan, Tang Xiu. It must be known that the contract to be signed between Li Laozhan and Yellow Steel Group was very important, and she feared that her boss would be worried and restless. "Fatty Li, I already know the place where I'm heading to in advance. It's the Shenong Ridge's Ghost King Valley, a very dangerous place. Even if it's me, I must be extra careful there. If you were to come with me, I'm afraid," Tang Xiu forced a smile. "What did you say?" Ji Shiyan, who was feeling vexed inside, suddenly exclaimed after hearing the place where Tang Xiu would go. "Is there a problem?" Tang Xiu asked. Ji Shiyan's face turned a bit unsightly, and quickly said, "Mr. Tang, have you given careful thought? The Ghost King Valley is a dreadful place. It's definitely the most dangerous place I know of. All these years, there have been tons of daredevils wanting to explore that valley, and as far as I know, no one has yet been able to come out of that place alive. Hence, for us, the Fey City's inhabitants, the Ghost King Valley is simply a death trap fraught with dangers." Tang Xiu glanced at her and immediately turned to Li Laozhan, saying with a smile, "You heard that, Fatty Li? The place I'm about to go is simply a death trap. You might as well go take care of your business. If after I come out of there you're still in Fey City, I'll then call you and we will have a glass of wine." Chapter 414, An Eyesore. A glint flashed in old Fatty Li's eyes. Shaking his head, he said with a smile, "Brother Tang, I wasn't originally interested in where are you going, but my curiosity got piqued after hearing this. All right, I'll take 4 bodyguards and enter Shenong Ridge with you, and then we go explore Ghost King Valley." This. Tang Xiu was a bit hesitant. Seeing the enthusiasm on old Fatty Li's face, he forced a wry smile and said, "Very well then, come with me if it won't affect your business deal. Anyhow, let's rest after getting to Ziming County. I need to buy papers and a pen to draw the shape of the herbs I'm looking for." "No problem." Fatty Old Li grinned. On the front seat, an angry look flashed in Ji Shiyan's face. Taking out her mobile phone, she dialed her boss's cell number. She then spoke about the situation there and Li Laozhan's decision. The boss was silent for a long time, before urging her to advise him otherwise. After ending the call, Ji Shiyan then turned her head and said, "Boss Li, Mr. Tang, my boss said that since Boss Li wants to go to Shenong Ridge, we must go with you to protect your safety. Tell your boss that I'll be with Tang Xiu, so we don't need any protection." Li Laozhan waved his hand and said, "Boss Li, please don't make things difficult for us. It's a direct order from my boss." Ji Shiyan forced a smile. After a moment's hesitation, Li Laozhan turned to Tang Xiu. This time he wanted to follow Tang Xiu to adventure and explore the ancient forest in the depths of the mountains. On the one hand, he wanted to regain his youthful spirit, while on the other, he also wanted to get along with Tang Xiu and get his favor. He felt that it was inconvenient for him to accept Ji Shiyan's request, as it would need Tang Xiu's consent. Seeing Li Laoshan's expression, Tang Xiu understood what he had in mind. After a moment's silence, he slowly said, "It's not good for me to reject if you want to follow us, is it? Anyhow, I need to tell you before we enter Shenong Ridge. In the case of any accidents happens and you lose your people, I won't take the responsibility for it." "I know." Ji Shiyan replied with a cold expression. Her tone was also a bit stiff and blunt. "Of course, if your people can help me find that medicinal herb, I will give 10 million yuan as a reward to the one who found it." Tang Xiu said once again, "As for the others, they will also be rewarded 1 million yuan for their labor." "Certainly, I won't give you a dime if we can't find it." Ji Shiyan's brows raised, as a surprised expression flashed in her eyes. Although she had inferred that Tang Xiu had an extraordinary background, this kind of big statement was really surprising nonetheless. After all, coming up with a total of 20 million, this made her unable to imagine what kind of precious medicinal herb it was. To think that it was worth it for him to promise such handsome rewards. Ziming County. It was a very ordinary small county town in the mountainous area with a very poor economic level. Only after more than a decade of developing tourism did this place turn more decent. Although the town was not on par with the county towns in more developed regions, it was barely able to reach the standard of modern development. Ji Shiyan had already made reservations in the county's best hotel beforehand. Albeit it was not a 3-star hotel, Tang Xiu was saved from the trouble of finding a room as he stayed in the double room together with Li Laoshan. While everyone else was having eating or resting, Tang Xiu drew the demonic revival grass shape. After which, he rested for several hours. After lunch, he gave the sketch to everyone and let them memorize it. "Brother Tang, are we leaving now?" When Li Laoshan heard Tang Xiu's suggestion for them to prepare to leave, he was surprised and immediately asked. "Yeah, I must find this medicinal herb as fast as possible. So we must set off now and try to reach the Ghost King Valley before dusk," Tang Xiu said. With a cold look, Ji Shiyan shot Tang Xiu a glance and lightly said, "Mr. Tang, I don't think you know the situation in Shenong Ridge. We probably won't be able to arrive at Ghost King Valley before night arrives even if we had left early in the morning, let alone now. I haven't been there, but I had once sent some people to investigate Shenong Ridge and Ghost King Valley. We need to travel dozens of kilometers from the county town to the north and climb several hills. After crossing 2 big rivers, only then can we arrive at the Ghost King Valley. Well, then let's do it to best of our ability," Tang Xiu said. A few minutes later, the group left the hotel and quickly set off toward Shenong Ridge's direction on 6 cars. When they arrived at the mountain foots surrounding Shenong Ridge, Ji Shiyan ordered some people to drive the car away, while she led 4 bodyguards and followed Tang Xiu and the others hiking. At first, everyone was very relaxed, even the 4 bodyguards led by Ji Shiyan, who had carries, could still keep up with everyone's pace. However, after crossing 2 mountains, they were somewhat panting and their pace significantly reduced. Immediately afterward, old Fatty Lee's 4 bodyguards who took over the carries were finally unable to endure it after trekking over another mountain. "Brother Tang, how about we take a rest? We have walked for 4 hours, my tights starting to tremble." Old Fatty Lee's face was full of sweat, as he forced a wry smile and said when he looked at Tang Xiu's face that neither looked red nor was out of breath. "All right. Let's rest for half an hour." Tang Xiu nodded. What made him surprised was that Ji Shiyan was only slightly sweating on her forehead and didn't even look tired, whereas old Fatty Li and the 8 bodyguards were profusely perspiring and looked fatigued. After half an hour of rest, everyone began to trek again. For the sake of not delaying time, Tang Xiu took the 4 backpacks from the bodyguards. This scene caused the 8 bodyguards to widen their eyes with shock. Even Ji Shiyan was astonished. They knew that each of those 4 large backpacks weighed several tens of kilos. Adding up, it was more than 90 kilograms. Tang Xiu's strength and physical quality caused everyone to marvel. Night fell. Everyone stopped at the mountainside of the fifth mountain. They found a place with flat terrain, thus everyone decided to stay there to camp, preparing to stay overnight. All of you wait here. I'll get some wild game and we'll have a barbecue tonight. Tang Xiu casually said while looking at the panting crowd on the ground. He then quickly slipped into the nearby woods. Li Laoshan raised his arm and was about to stop Tang Xiu. However, Tang Xiu's speed was too fast and he couldn't stop him. He saw Tang Xiu's figure disappearing into the woods, as a look of helplessness appeared on his plump face. Boss Li, who exactly is he? At this moment, Ji Shiyan was full of curiosity toward Tang Xiu. It was because, along the way, their travel was not particularly smooth. On several occasions, they encountered several wild animals, and it was Tang Xiu who came to the front to drive them away. He even lent a hand to several miserably tired people. Li Laoshan grinned and said, he's someone with extraordinary talent. Even I myself am unable to completely understand this little brother of mine. Secretary Ji, don't look down on him. I've seen people who looked down on him and ended up miserable. After hesitating for a moment, Ji Shiyan then said in a low voice, he's indeed very strong. To think that he can easily traverse this mountain. He should be a martial artist, yes? But, he's way too insane. Insane? Li Laoshan burst into laughter. Brother Tang is modest and has a good character. You think he's insane because he's an eyesore for you? Yeah, he's kinda annoying and tiresome. Ji Shiyan said. Well, let's forget it. I'll say nothing more about him. Li Laoshan said with a smile, if anything, you'll know what he is like after you get along with him. Regardless, I still must advise you not to provoke him. Let alone you yourself, even if it's your boss, he will probably suffer quite a loss. But Boss Li, you haven't answered me. What is his background? Ji Shiyan quickly asked. He has a lot of identities. However, I won't tell you the details. Li Laoshan said with a smile, in short, just remember my words, do not provoke him. Don't court trouble for yourself and the Yellow Steel Group. Or else, I won't work with you again if he acts against you. I understand. Ji Shiyan nodded, yet the curiosity inside her heart toward Tang Xiu's identity grew. All right, let everyone rest after setting up the tents. Li Laoshan said with a smile, by the way, tell some men to pick firewood for the barbecue. A flash of contempt was seen in Ji Shiyan's eyes as she said, Boss Li, please don't joke with me. He did say he'd get some wild games or something, but did you take it seriously? This forested mountain is very dark. Although it's not as if you can't see anything, wanting to hunt some game is kind of. Before she finished speaking, it was as though an invisible person grabbed her neck at this moment, causing her to swallow her words. A dazed look appeared on her pretty face as she looked at Tang Xiu in disbelief, as he just came out of the darkness with something in his hand. Was that thing in his hand a deer? Wow. You're amazing, Brother Tang. It's been only a few minutes, yet you actually got such a good thing. Li Laoshan crawled up from the ground with shining eyes and praised. Tang Xiu put the deer on the ground. He then smiled and said, it was just good luck that I spotted this deer. Any of you know how to barbecue? Li Laoshan smacked his lips and said with a smile, I'm not sure about others, but roasting meat is something this fatty Li is great at. That's right, Secretary Ji, your man bought a lot of life supplies. Did you buy seasonings or something? I saw the item list they bought, and I think they have sauce for roasting meat. Ji Shiyan nodded and said, in fact, one of my bodyguards is from a hunter family. That's great. Li Laoshan exclaimed as he took the deer. Afterward, he strode toward the side. Ji Shiyan turned to Tang Xiu. Although the night was dark, she still could see Tang Xiu's tranquil expression, since the distance between the two was relatively close. After hesitating for a moment, she asked, "Mr. Tang, how did you do it?" "Well, it was very simple, really," Tang Xiu said lightly. "I was faster and stronger than it." Chapter 4:15, If one is not enough, how about two? Ji Shiyan's response could only be described as speechless. Easy to understand, simple, and straightforward, yet giving a feeling of a perfunctory person. She wasn't able to dig anything about Tang Xiu's identity from Li Laozhan a moment ago. Therefore, she intended to ask him personally. After organizing the words she wanted to say, she then said, "Mr. Tang, we can be considered as companions since we entered Shenong Ridge together, but I know nothing about you. Would you mind introducing yourself?" As if able to see through her mind, Tang Xiu smiled lightly and said, "Do you want to find out about my identity and background? Didn't old Fatty Li told you?" "He didn't tell me anything." Ji Shiyan shook her head. "As a matter of fact, you don't need to know anything about me." Tang Xiu gave a slight smile and said, "It's because we simply met by chance, and thus became companions. If anything, we won't cross each other again in the future after leaving Shenong Ridge. So, it's unimportant for you to know who I am." "You?" Ji Shiyan looked furious, yet she suppressed the anger. Tang Xiu was an eyesore for her, and now, after hearing his words, her impression of him just got worse. Hence, she didn't feel like paying attention to him anymore. She turned to her bodyguard, helping him set up a tent. A cool mountain breeze blew. Tang Xiu closed his eyes and started cultivating quietly. The air inside the ancient forest in the depths of the mountain was very fresh and contained abundant spiritual qi. The star force inside his body surged through his meridians, increasing his perception. As the wind brought the barbecue fragrance along, Tang Xiu's ear moved slightly and his eyes suddenly opened. "Everyone, be careful. There's something approaching us." Tang Xiu shouted and his body floated up, taking his blood guzzler dagger in hand. His eyes were vigilant, constantly scanning the surrounding area. He instantly released his spiritual sense, covering the 200 to 300 meters of the surrounding area. Upon hearing him, the 8 who were packing their tents and the rest of the bodyguards who were resting immediately jumped and glanced around, raising their vigilance to guard against all possible dangers. Even Ji Shiyan had her expression slightly changed. Li Laozhan raised his head and said, "Brother Tang, I'll hand command over our safety to you. I'm responsible for roasting the meat. Thus, we can enjoy a delicious barbecue when it's safe." Tang Xiu wryly smiled upon hearing it. This Li Laozhan truly had big balls. As time passed by, vague howls could be faintly heard. Furthermore, the sounds were getting clearer. "Be careful, it's a pack of wolves." A middle-aged bodyguard's expression slightly changed as he suddenly reminded the rest. Tang Xiu looked at him with slight astonishment. He didn't expect this man's hearing to be so sensitive. A few minutes later, Tang Xiu secretly forced a smile, since several wild wolves appeared within the range of his spiritual sense. After the wolves appeared in his spiritual sense range, they observed all directions and howled to summon the rest of pack. After several breaths, dozens of wild wolves quickly approached. In this few minutes, Tang Xiu discovered that the middle-aged bodyguard who had just alerted everyone took 4 or 5 roots the size of baby's arm, and a 3 meters long branch from the surroundings. He then deftly bundled up the dry firewood to one of the branches. "Are you making a torch?" Tang Xiu came toward the middle-aged bodyguard and asked.
"Yeah."
"Lit it up and wait." The middle-aged bodyguard nodded and said, "If the wolf pack surrounds us, we can use it to threaten to them. There are nearly 50 wild wolves coming, and they are about 100 meters away from us." Tang Xiu said, "They are not in a hurry to attack us, but are hiding in the dark, peeping at us. Do you see the bushes over there? There are 2 wolves hiding there, scouting the place." The middle-aged bodyguard's complexion changed. He immediately gave the torch to his companion and growled, "Light it up quickly. If Mr. Tang is correct, those wolves should be attacking us within the next 2 minutes. To my knowledge, they must have been attracted by the smell of roasted meat. There's also another big guy coming at us." Tang Xiu sighed, "Anyhow, you'll take up the defense. I'll do the hunt and killing." Li Laozhan looked up and said with a solemn face, "Brother Tang, don't take it lightly. Those wolves are cruel and sinister. A bear is also very powerful and its speed is rather fast too. If you take it lightly, you may lose your life due to carelessness." "Relax, I don't do things half-heartedly." Tang Xiu nodded. He had the strength, thus the confidence. Tang Xiu was even sure that he alone could easily kill the entire pack of wolves and the bear. However, there were the bodyguards and Ji Shiyan, after all. He didn't want to expose his identity as a cultivator. Yet, that was the only solution that could guarantee to solve the immediate crisis, rather than having them all killed. Shoo. With his spiritual sense covering the area, Tang Xiu locked on the 2 wild wolves hiding in the bushes. In an instant, his body bolted toward them. Ayuo. Ayuo. The wolves howled and squeaked. When they were preparing to retreat and flee, the blood guzzler slashed in a curved trajectory midair, as it accurately swept one of the wolves' neck and then stabbed the other's abdomen. The blood guzzler was a dagger refined by Tang Xiu himself, and was magical weapon. Hence, it could easily kill the 2 wolves under Tang Xiu's control. Whoosh. 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 Wild wolves quickly rushed over with eyes emitting out green light. Their eyes flashed with savage and ferocious intent as they bolted toward Tang Xiu, attempting to prey on him. Die. Brandishing the blood guzzler, Tang Xiu constantly flashed around, slashing the wolves. Within half a minute, more than 10 wild wolves had died in his hands, and more than a dozen were severely injured. Aouo. The wolves' miserable shrills reverberated in all directions, as the wolves that were still alive fled. Ferocious and sinister their nature may be, yet, facing a terrifying opponent such as Tang Xiu, they could only flee after losing so many companions. Humph. Tang Xiu used his spiritual sense to monitor the fleeing wolves. As they disappeared from the range of his spiritual sense, he then took a wild wolf's corpse and turned toward the campfire. Bam! Tang Xiu dropped the wolf's corpse in front of Li Laozhan under everyone's jaw-dropped gaze. He then said with a smile, "I was just worrying that one roasted deer wouldn't be enough for everyone. Luckily a prey delivered itself to our door. Anyhow, Fatty Li, you gotta work hard again and roast this wolf as well." Gulping down his saliva, Li Laozhan carefully asked, "Brother Tang, I heard the howling of many wolves. You were actually surrounded by the pack of wolves, yet, not only are you safe, you even killed one? Damn, aren't you too powerful?" "I brought just one corpse, is it enough to be called powerful?" Tang Xiu with a strange tone. "If you're not powerful, then who else can be called powerful?" Li Laozhan forced a smile. Tang Xiu pointed to the direction where he had just killed the wolves, turned to Ji Shiyan, and said with a smile, "Secretary Ji, I'll have to trouble you to take some men to check it out. If you think wolf meat is good, you can bring back a few more." "What do you mean?" Ji Shiyan asked dully. "You'll know after you get there," Tang Xiu said with a smile. Ji Shiyan was silent for several seconds. She finally nodded and slowly led the 4 bodyguards. A few minutes later, under the torch's light, she saw a scene that made her eyes stare wide with shock. Around her, the 4 bodyguards were stunned as well, their hearts madly thumping and their bodies slightly shivering. These many dead wolves?" a bodyguard murmured in a low voice. Ji Shiyan was hardly able to turn her head the way they came. She then inhaled deeply to suppress her shock and said in a deep voice, "Everyone, work together and bring the dead wolves back." Secretary Ji, we can't bring them all at once. A bodyguard called out. Then do it twice if you can't do it all at once. Ji Shurian said in a deep voice, be quick and careful, the wolves still alive might come back to get revenge. 5 minutes later, Ji Shurian appeared near the campfire, bringing a wolf corpse, as the 4 bodyguards also brought 2 each. Heavens! This. Li Laoshan sprang up, as his bottom left the stone for the first time. He even ignored the roasted venison in front of him. In disbelief, he exclaimed, how could there be so many dead wolves? These wild wolves, were they slain by Brother Tang? Nodding in response, Ji Shurian then looked at Tang Xiu with a bit of fear in her eyes. She finally realized what Li Laoshan meant before. What he said was not to scare her out. This mysterious Mr. Tang was truly terrifying. She had inspected the corpses and found that most of them were slain by a knife. Among them were 2 or 3 wild wolves with a smashed head and burst eyes. There was no wound anywhere else. What did this mean? It meant that they were killed barehandedly by Tang Xiu. She could hardly imagine how powerful and how fast Tang Xiu was, to think that he could kill wild wolves with bare hands. Li Laoshan strode toward Tang Xiu and said in astonishment, Brother Tang, how powerful are you, exactly? That lad from Qingcheng Mountain was certainly unable to do this. I have made it clear already when I was in Saipan, no? Tang Xiu chuckled and said, he couldn't even defeat my men, how could he be my opponent? Gulping his saliva yet again, Li Laoshan raised his thumb and sighed in praise, I'm impressed, I really am. No wonder Qin Jizhong is your disciple. I'm now itching to acknowledge you as my master as well. Well, you first gotta reduce your big belly if you want to have me as your teacher. Tang Xiu chuckled as he replied back. With an embarrassed smile, Li Laoshan was about to speak when he saw that Ji Shurian and the 4 bodyguards were about to leave again. He suddenly asked curiously, Secretary Ji, are you? The rest of the dead wolves haven't been brought over yet. Shall we go bring the rest? Ji Shurian replied. There are more? Li Laoshan jumped up and involuntarily cried out in fright.